guys, I am back with a video I have been wanting to film and planning to film since June. And it's December and we're finally making the time to do it. I plan on filming more this month because I wanted to do a Vlogmas back in June, but no way, that's not happening. But I do want to kind of resurrect my channel this month. I've been wanting to make videos, I just haven't been disciplined enough. But anyway, I do plan on giving like a life update in a future video, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. So yeah, but today like I said, want to do a video I've been wanting to do since June, because if I had done it in June, there would be a lot less books to talk about. Actually, no, there wouldn't, because I never finished a book all throughout September, October, and I finished a book November 30th, so most of November. But I am here to talk about, really briefly, every book I've read so far in 2022. And because it's December, I doubt I'll read a whole lot more this year, but I figured I'd go ahead and talk about them all since I never did any sort of monthly wrap-up this year. I may have done one for January, I can't even remember at this point. But yeah, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about them. There's a lot that I had to read for school at the beginning of this year before I changed my major. And then also there were quite a few books that I borrowed from the library. There's also books that I've read that I don't have on me right now because I have since loaned them out. So yeah, I'll just hold up the ones that I do have, and if I don't have them, I will do my best to look for pictures of them. I will kind of be looking down at my phone on my Goodreads because I can't remember all the books I read this year. And as always, I will be going through them in order of when I read them. So from the first book I finished this year to the most recent book I finished. So yeah, without further blathering, I will get right into the books. First up, we have a book that I actually own and still have. I have them all like in a jumbled pile off camera, so I might just be making a lot of noise. Anyway, it's Keep Going by Austin Kleon. 10 Ways to Stay Creative in Good Times and Bad. This was the first book that I finished in 2022. It is just a cute little creative little booklet for creatives. If you're an artist, a writer, other things to be creative with, if you knit, if you scrapbook, I don't know. But whatever you do that is your creative outlet, this is just a great book to kind of like motivate you, especially if you've lost motivation or maybe you've lost a little bit of passion or love or desire for it. This is definitely a book I would recommend if you're in need of that. I liked it a lot. The next book that I read after that was Live No Lies. There it is. Live No Lies by John Mark Comer. This is a Christian nonfiction book that I rated 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it a lot. I have a few tabbies. I started tabbing books this year. Not every book I read, but I started tabbing books that I kind of knew I wanted to tab. That doesn't really make sense. But anyway, so I've been liking that. I like going back and seeing like what stuck out to me. This is basically about, I'll just read this, recognizing and resisting the 3 enemies that sabotage your peace. Obviously, as a Christian, I love John Mark Comer. I really respect him as a teacher of the Bible. This was my first book of his to read, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like he explained everything he wrote about really well, and none of it was like convoluted. None of it was like out of left field, like where did he pull that from? It was very like well thought out. And yeah, he also has a really nicely detailed reference bibliography, whatever, and he even has like his own commentary. Like here he references a book, but then he says this is one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. I don't know, it's just like, those are cute little touches to me. I really enjoyed it, would recommend if you're at all interested. The next book I read I've since I think unhauled. I think I got rid of it because I can't find it. It's called The Chaos of Standing Still by Jessica Brody. This was just a young adult, New Year's Eve, stuck in the Denver International Airport, kind of little romance. There is a little bit of emotional aspect to it. Our main character, can't remember her name, is grieving the death of her best friend who died on New Year's Day the year before. And there's a text from her best friend that she's left unread on her phone for a year, and since it's about to be the 1-year anniversary of when her best friend died, she like I guess wants to read it then, or she's just debating on whether or not she's ready to read it because it's the last thing of her best friend. So anyway, that's what that's about. I give it like 3.5. It was kind of middle of the road. I do remember some parts of it, but it isn't one that like I felt like had a substantial impact on me. So it was cute though for that time of year. I think if you're wanting to read a book set during New Year's Eve and the main character is stuck because of a blizzard at an airport. You should absolutely give it a go. The next book I read for school, it was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. I really enjoyed reading this while simultaneously like studying it and like the background and also just Mark Twain and his life. I think if I had to read this on its own, just like not knowing anything about it, like not knowing really the context and like the time in history when it was written and published, I don't think I would have enjoyed it nearly as much. And even then I didn't really like all like the accents that he wrote into the book. I understand he did like his research and wrote them accurately, but it was just really hard for me to read if I wasn't talking out loud. But anyway, I did enjoy, like I said, kind of talking about it more so than actually reading it. And I also don't know why this book is marketed towards children. I think like most of its nuances can only be understood by adults. But that's my hot take on that one. The next short story I read for school was called Editha by William Dean Howells. It's like an anti-war short story. I liked it. A lot of the reviews on Goodreads like fundamentally misunderstood it, and I thought that was really funny. The next book I read for a book club. It's called The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. I am probably absolutely mispronouncing that, so I apologize. I read this, like I said, for book club. I thought it was good. I thought it had beautiful writing. It's about like this kind of forbidden romance between, I can't remember who's the Turkish Cypriot and the Greek Cypriot. You follow this man and woman who fall in love, even though they're from opposing lines of like this civil war on the Greek island of, I want to say it's called Cyprus. Please don't get upset if I'm wrong. I know that I read this, but it's been a while. That I read this back in, I think, January. Anyway, you follow them as they're teenagers falling in love, and then there's another timeline you follow through their daughter, and the mom has since died. There's also a weird perspective you get from a fig tree, which is interesting, and there's something about that that I had a hunch about early on, but that's all I'm gonna say about that. I thought it was a really good read. I thought it was, like I already said, just beautiful. Had really pretty writing. After that, we read another short story for school called The Outcasts of Poker Flat by Bret Harte. Didn't like it. All I wrote on my Goodreads, read for school, not a fan. After that, I borrowed from the library The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. I also had to read this one for school. I wrote this on my Goodreads review. I've said it before, I'm gonna say it again. This book can cure insomnia. I was a fan of like juicy gossip of the book. It was very like full of drama, but it was so dense. It was so pedantic and wordy, and I guess that's the thing about Henry James that I didn't know before going into this book, but that his books are like that. They're just like he got paid by the word or something like that. I wasn't a fan of how it was written, but the actual contents of the story were very interesting to read about. The main character, Isabel, she's just a character, and you should study the book. I think it's interesting. The book I read after that, this was my COVID book. I got COVID at the end of January. After going all of 2020 and all of 2021 without getting it, I got it right like a couple weeks before my birthday in January, and I had to read a book because I was in bed for like 4 days. I wasn't out for very long. But the book that I read during that time, and I've obviously labeled it my COVID book, was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I borrowed it from the library, which I'm hoping they cleaned it because I did read it while I was sick. I had it already before. Like, I had already had the book before I got COVID. I didn't like get COVID and then was like, I'm gonna get a book from the library. That's not how that happened. Anyway, I read it and I really enjoyed it. V.E. Schwab, so far, every book I've read of hers, I've read Vicious, Vengeful, A Darker Shade of Magic, and now Addie LaRue. They're all, to me, great books. I think she just has a way of writing interesting concepts in a way that's just so exciting and entertaining. Like, I read reviews that said this book had a slow start. It didn't for me personally. I was like enthralled from the beginning. It got a little slow in the middle when like Henry's like whole background story gets kind of delved into, but that didn't last long, honestly, because at first I didn't know how I felt about Henry, but then I ended up like loving him. But yeah, I would recommend it. I gave it like 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really good. After that, I read another short story for school. I have a few short stories right now in a row for school. So The Open Boat by Stephen Crane, wasn't a fan. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I liked it, but I felt like I was also going insane while I was reading it because I'm like, what's going on? After that, I read The Passing of Grandison by Charles W. Chestnut. I gave this one 4 stars. I actually really liked this. This has like a little bit of a plot twist at the end, if you can call it that. I enjoyed it a lot. Then after that one, I read To Build a Fire by Jack London. I actually ended up writing a paper on this one. All I'll say is that, is it a survival story? Can you really classify it as such? Alright, after that I read a book that, again, I own. I read it for myself, not for school. It's called Confronting Christianity, 12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion by Rebecca McLaughlin. So every question is its own chapter, and as you can see, why did I say it like that? As you can see, I tabbed this book up. I thought it was really good. I gave it like 4.5 out of 5 stars because there were a couple questions at the end that me personally, I would have answered differently because I just felt like it just wasn't as like well-rounded of an answer as it could have been to the questions, the last 2 questions. But if you want to know what they are, pick this book up and research it because it's really good and I think it's worth the read. After that, I read another Christian nonfiction book called Redeeming Your Time by Jordan Raynor, 7 Biblical Principles for Being Purposeful, Present, and Wildly Productive. I have a few post-it notes that I put in this one. I needed this book so badly because I was having a really difficult time being a procrastinator when it came to my schoolwork. So this one is definitely geared more towards like businessmen and women or entrepreneurs or just like if you work at like a corporate job, because there's a whole chapter, I want to say it's the 3rd or 4th chapter, that is just practical tip after practical tip, and I actually ended up skipping most of that one because it just didn't really apply to me, like the tips he was giving. But everything else, as far as like kind of structuring your time and making sure you're starting your day in prayer and stuff like that, I thought was just obviously really good advice, and also how he kind of dissected the life of Christ and looked at it from the way that how like Jesus stewarded his time, because I feel like as Christians or people who read the Bible or the Gospels, they don't necessarily study the life of Jesus to study like how was he productive with his time, like how did he steward his time. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but when I read about Jesus, I was just like, look at the miracles and look at the love, but you know, not really focused on how he spent his time or managed it, I guess. So I thought that was just an interesting book to read. After that, I read a book I borrowed from the library, and I'm so glad I got it from the library because it would have been a total waste of money for me. It was The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and her husband, who I can't pronounce his name. It's Austin Sigmund Broca? I'm so sorry. I did not like this book. I thought it was so bad. The writing was not that great. It's got a lot of emotional cheating in it, and so it's like marketed and written to be like this romantic comedy of a book, and it just wasn't that for me. I couldn't stand the characters, and yeah. It has one of the like cutest covers. It makes you think it's gonna be just adorable and lovely, and it's not. So yeah, I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. After that, I read Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch, which is a young adult. I'd say it's a like romance, but there's really not a whole lot or any really romance. It's mainly about a brother and a sister kind of like repatching their relationship. I liked this one a lot. I gave it, well, on Goodreads it says I gave it 3 stars, but it was definitely more of like 3.5 to a 4 because it's not so like lovey-dovey. I will say I think I like Love and Gelato just a teensy bit more because I feel like that book had a little bit of a stronger impact for me, or like a more emotional impact, but this one's still cute nonetheless. It's like a Irish road trip story, or road trip in Ireland, and our characters go on that. Alright, that's that one. I'm not being speedy enough. After that, I read 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You by Tony Rink. I really enjoyed this one. If you are having trouble with like feeling like you have an addiction to your phone and wanting to break it, this should be your next read. I think he just offers up like reasons why, but then also ways you can break kind of like the cycle of like you get off your phone for 5 minutes and then remember, oh no, I want to get back on my phone, and then like you get back on it. I know that I've struggled before with kind of feeling like it is an addiction, especially to like social media and also checking my email weirdly. But yeah, I think this one's a really insightful read. I will say too, he's a Christian author, so he does also talk about like biblical things, but it's not like in your face, and he stays on point. And also the conclusion of this book is one of the like best conclusions I've ever read to any book, like nonfiction book. Anyway, would highly recommend that one. They might start popping out behind me, so. Anyway, Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna was the next book that I read. I read this for my book club. I really liked this one, which was such a relief after reading The Four Winds last year and hating it. This was good. I will say, if you liked the movie Beaches, or if you've seen the movie Beaches, this book is very reminiscent of that. It's about two lifelong friends who meet in middle school and they stay friends all throughout high school, college, into adulthood. One of them has more so a career that she loves, and the other one has a family that she loves, but then also when they like bicker and fight like friends do. Anyway, I thought it was really good and it made me cry. So any book that does that, I'm like, you're great in my opinion. If you can make me feel, you did a good job. Alright, after that I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I thought it was really good, but it's really heavy. So it's really hard, I'm gonna say really a lot, for me to recommend this one. You just have to be, I think, in a really healthy mental space and just be prepared to like read a pretty dark story. The writing was great. The perspective was amazing. I can say a lot about this book, and that's why I'm like, I have to keep it brief. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but saying I really liked it, I don't know, makes me think like, I loved like what it was about. And in a way I do. I love how it was portrayed. So if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about, but yeah, just know it's basically about a student-teacher relationship, like pedophilia, child grooming, manipulating, that kind of whole thing. So, like I said, not like good topics, but the way she wrote about them was great. So after that, I picked up a lighthearted rom-com of a young adult book, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I thought this one was cute. It was everything I was wanting it to be coming off of My Dark Vanessa. It's full of the cliches. Our main character is like obsessed with rom-coms and she just wants to like live in one, and she ends up doing so, and it's just really cute. So would recommend that one. After that, I read a book that I wanted to read because I was gonna do like this video where I'm like, I read really hyped up books that on TikTok, even though I don't have TikTok, but I see the videos that come over from TikTok to Instagram or Bookstagram. So anyway, I saw the book Addicted to You by Krista Ritchie really hyped up, and did not like this one at all. It exists as a book. I don't really have the strongest feelings of hatred against it. I just didn't like it. I don't like it very much. And I can't remember hardly anything. I just know that the two main characters, one's addicted to pornography and the other one's addicted to alcohol. So I'm just like, I don't even know why I went into that being like, this is great. This is gonna be so good. It wasn't. Alright, after that I read Verity by Colleen Hoover, which I know I pulled. Oh, here it is. Sorry. I read Verity by Colleen Hoover, another one that was gonna be a part of the whole really hyped books on Bookstagram, Reels, TikTok, whatever. I liked this one. And I know this one has like, Colleen Hoover in general has a lot of very divided opinions, but I really liked this. It's a thriller, mystery. It kept me turning the pages. I read it within I think 12 hours. I stayed up late to finish it, and I also had my brother's fiance read it as well. So I liked it, and that's all I'll have to say. Also, absolutely team manuscript. If you're team letter, what's wrong with you? Okay, I've really got to start going faster. John Green, The Anthropocene Reviewed. I mainly listened to this one on audiobook, and I would recommend doing that because there's 3 extra short stories in this little short story anthology. Is anthology the right word? That are not in the printed copy. That took me a long time to say. Alright, I liked it a lot. I loved that he narrated the audiobook, which is why I started listening to it on audiobook, because if you don't know, I am not an audiobook girly. I wish I was. I've tried so hard, and it just doesn't work out for me. But I think because this was nonfiction, and it was also John Green narrating it, it felt more kind of almost like a mini podcasts in a way. And what's so weird is like, I'm a podcast queen. I can do that all day. I cannot do audiobooks. I don't know why. I think following a conversation is a little bit easier for me than following like a story where it's like you need to pick up on things and like remember things. Am I making sense? Am I tracking? I don't know. But anyway, I really enjoyed this one. The one short story that in my mind, there is a hair, that I can think of that like really stood out to me, made me laugh but also made me feel very like deeply, was Auld Lang Syne. That was probably my favorite one, but I also really loved the one on mortification, which is one that's only on the audiobook. So would recommend. especially the audiobook. After that, I read probably one of my favorite books of the year. Absolutely, yeah, one of my favorite books of the year, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I am not original here in being someone who's over the moon about this book. I went and saw it in theaters, the movie, and I thought they did a good job adapting it. They did miss some things in the book that I would have liked to have seen on screen, but you know, it's fine. Anyway, I don't have my copy on me because I have since loaned it to my brother's fiance. But yeah, just know I gave it 5 stars, and I thought the writing was impeccable, and the story was just so engrossing, and the way it unfolded. But I think the main thing that I loved was that I felt just as alone in a marsh as Kaya did while reading. And I'm like, I'm in my bedroom. But I felt like I was in that marsh by myself, having to tough it out. And honestly, I would have died. I would have never been able to survive in that climate. After that, I read The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. It was cute. It's a young adult book. I have watched the show and I really enjoy the show. I think they did a good job adapting this series. Belly spends summer with this family. There's 2 boys, Jeremiah and Conrad. I'm not going to sum it up. You know what it is. But anyway, I will say, because it's called Cousins Beach, I kept thinking that Jeremiah and Conrad were her cousins. And then I was like, is this Cousins Beach, Alabama? But no, they're not her cousins. But I don't know why. She really should have thought of a new name for that fake little coastal town that they stay in, because I don't know why, but it always just made me think that those are her cousins. I had to actually remind myself they're not her cousins. Alright, after that, I have an unpopular opinion. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. My unpopular opinion is that I did not love this book, but I did like it. I'm a Daisy Jones fangirl all the way, and so I was really wanting this book to have the same experience, because when I read Daisy Jones, I thought that was a real band. I was under the influence of that book like no other book I've ever been in before. I was distraught. I could not go online and Google an interview or a concert of Daisy Jones and the Six. This book did not have that same kind of impact on me. I thought the writing, again, was great. I thought the story was entertaining and interesting, but as far as being absolutely taken by this world that she creates, this fictional world, just didn't happen for me. And so I know that I'm kind of now judging this book based on the experience I wanted it to give me, like Daisy Jones did. So I know that's a little harsh, I guess, in that respect, because other than that, like I said, the story was good. I still don't really know how I feel about the ending and the way the ending unfolded. Nonetheless, it's an interesting read, and I get why people love it, but again, after coming off of Daisy Jones, which I read a few years ago, and just being floored by that one, this book, for me, kind of pales in comparison to Daisy Jones, which, if you don't know, is one of my favorite books and definitely my favorite TJR book. Okay, we're seriously taking forever. What If It's Wonderful by Nicole Zazowski. It's a Christian nonfiction book basically for people who fear that God has your worst interests in heart and in mind. He doesn't. This is a great book to remind you that. Would highly recommend. Highlighted so much of this book. I mean, look at this, just this one page. I also started going to therapy in the midst of reading this, and that did a lot for me. That helped me a lot. After that, I read I Don't Have It Anymore, The Counselors by Jessica Goodman, because this was the group read for the Suns Out Books Out readathon. I was just expecting it to be something that it's not, and because of that, I only gave it 2.5 to 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was going to be more slasher, like a slasher story, but it kind of wasn't. It was really just kind of a mystery that happened at a summer camp lake. I think if you can go into it not expecting it to be a slasher, you might enjoy it more. I also had an issue with all the teenagers absolutely going into town and being able to drink, and nobody had a problem with it. Where does that happen? Because they're 17, 18. I'm like, no, you can't go into an establishment and just drink. Without fake IDs. Anyway, okay. After that, I read One Italian Summer for the Suns Out Books Out readathon. I liked this book for all of the amazing food descriptions, but there is a humongously horrible aspect of this book that I can't say because it would be a spoiler, that I did not like. And at the end of the book, it did not get resolved. It didn't even get mentioned. It didn't get talked about. It did not get brought into the shameful light it should have been brought into. And it just really made me mad. So, wow, I loved the setting. It's set in Italy. I would say where it's set, but I know I'm going to say it wrong. It starts with a P. I'm not going to say it. I'm going to sound like an idiot. It's on the Amalfi Coast. And even that, I don't even know if I said that right. I'm from the South. Anyway, yeah. I thought it had great descriptions, but the actual story for me was just like the one aspect of it, which ended up being a huge aspect of it, I don't know, I couldn't get on board with. After that, I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J Maas. This is a chunk. This is undoubtedly the smuttiest book I've ever read, and so if you're really into smutty books, you should give this one a go, but just know this is also the 4th book in a series I could have done without all of the smut. But Nesta's character development in this book was amazing to me. I loved the whole staircase thing, like the stairs. What, 10,000, was it 10,000 steps? Or was it like 100 or 50,000, 100,000? There were like a lot of steps. That whole like storyline through this book I thought was really good. Sarah J Maas just, she knows how to write a fantasy world, and she knows how to write characters that you can root for, and like the family dynamic of friendship, like how friends can feel like family. She does such a good job at that. The smut though, not the best, but I liked it for everything but the smut. Alright, People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I wish I had my copy, but I have since loaned it out again to my brother's fiance, Kindle. And she needs to read it. She has not read it yet. This is probably one of my favorite books of the year. Like, definitely top 3. I loved this book. And it is a rom-com, and I'm a little bit late to the game on it because it came out last year. But yes, loved it so much. And that's all I can say about that. Because I don't know why, but when you talk about books you like, it's so much harder to actually give, like, an actual review other than just like, it was so good, I loved it. After that, I read on my Kindle Evidence of the Affair. I'm grabbing my Kindle. This is it. Isn't she cute? I got my first Kindle this year. Well, actually, I had one of the OG Kindles when I was like in 7th grade, but I got my first like modern Kindle this year. I read Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is a short story about this woman who finds out her husband's been cheating, and she reaches out to the husband of the woman her husband has been cheating with. I hope that makes sense. And so it's a total epistolary, is that how you say it? Short story, because they just write to each other through letters, and it's very interesting, and the end of that one hits you like a ton of bricks. After that, read such a good book, A Wild Ride. Actually, Buddy read this one with Cott from Cott Reads a Lot, but it's Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This, I don't know if I could say this is like in my top 3 or top 5, but I did really enjoy this book, and I do still think about this one often, and I don't know why, because, I don't know, like it's just one of those unassuming books that you realize had a maybe bigger impact on your life, or just made a stronger impact on your mind than you thought it did. But like, I loved this book, and initially I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but like it's definitely a 4.5. I just really like it. It's about childhood, well, like kind of middle school friends to lovers, second chance romance, and you follow them across, I want to say that it's like 6 summers that you follow them through as they progress from friends to more than friends. It's just so good. There is like a weird scene where like he's running after her naked in like in the open air. Like it's not even in a house, he's like out on the street. And I actually talked about that with a bookish friend of mine, how it was just like picturing that was just like really funny. Alright, after that I picked up Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty. This is a book I'm very late to the game, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. No, I gave it 5 stars. I'll just read what I said in my Goodreads. This is the first mystery novel I've read that's made me laugh that much from beginning to end. I'm the biggest fan of Madeline Martha McKenzie. I'm so happy to share that name with her, even though it's her last name and my first name. We'll forgive her for that. I really liked her character. I tried watching the show, but I couldn't do the show because of kind of like the abuse that's depicted in this book. I can read about it and be kind of okay, but having to like see it, like act it out, just, I don't know, I can't. After that, I read The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, if you don't know, wrote The Chronicles of Narnia. But this is a nonfiction book about the four loves, as like the Greeks I think originally like define them. I wish I could remember exactly what they all are. I know one of them is agape, the unconditional one. But yeah, a lot of this book did go over my head. I do still have a copy, I just don't know where it is, so I'll probably put a picture up. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, but there were definitely parts of it where I'm like, I don't think I understand what he's saying. But then there were parts where I did understand what he was saying, and he's a funny man. He's funny. He's very humorous in the way he presents the truth. And I just think not a lot of people can say that about how they write, especially about like God and love and philosophical thoughts, and I just spit. Alright, after that I borrowed a book called Bunny from the library. This book was a trip. Oh my gosh, and I actually really liked it. I will say though, it does make you feel lonely, and not in the kind of like cool way like Kaya in the Marsh. This is definitely a loneliness where it feels just like it's a cold lonely, and that's all that I know how to describe it. But it was very interesting, and it's definitely a book I cannot say is anything like anything I've personally read before, and for that I thought it was worth like a good rating because it was just such a unique read, and the way that, yes, it also made me feel as lonely as the main character, just in a totally different way. I thought was also really well done. So I think after you read that, you should read something lighthearted, like I did. I finished up the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy after Bunny. I started tabbing them, so as you can see, I have tabs in these. I was not happy with the way that this trilogy ended. Wasn't happy with it at all. But it's fine. I would say who I'm the girly for, but I feel like that's kind of spoilery, but if you've read the series or know how it ends, and you know by me saying I was disappointed by the ending, then I think you'll know who I'm a bigger fan of Belly being with. And even then, there's another take on that I wish I could talk about. But anyway, I thought that they were cute and just really easy reads. I read most of this last one at the car dealership because I had to take my car in after a nail got in one of my tires. So this book is now always going to make me think of like waiting for my car to get done at the dealership. Anyway, would recommend this series, and I'm very excited for seasons 2 and 3 of the show. After that, I finally read, and I'm catching up on all of the old ones that I didn't start with because, like The Hunger Games, I'll never have to catch up on that one. I read that one when it was at its peak. Divergent, read that one back in like 2013. But Shatter Me was one that I never read, so I finally picked this one up, and I did tab it as well. I color-coded it. I don't know if you can see the blue tabs. But anyway, I read Shatter Me. Young adult fantasy. She can't touch anyone or else they like get hurt or injured or die or something like that. I gave it 4 stars, but looking back on it, I can't really remember a whole lot. I kind of remember a little bit of the end. But yeah, that's all that is. I did, though, go onto my Kindle and read... Oh, they all just fell and that scared me. I did go onto my Kindle and I read the novella that immediately follows the first book called Destroy Me. And I'll read what I wrote in my Goodreads review. I said, but like, why is Warner falling in love with the girl he ultimately pities and feels sorry for? And then I said, don't get me wrong, Warner over Adam, but there's a level of insta-love and the creep factor of learning how often Warner watched Juliet in her cell in the asylum. So that's what I wrote about that. Maybe I should just be reading my Goodreads reviews. Alright, after that I read, this was actually for a small group at my church, I read Eyes Up by Alexandra V. Hoover. We all loved it. I loved it. All the women that we read together and talked about it with loved it. It's a Christian nonfiction book. It's for women, all about how to trust God's heart by tracing his hand. It was just really good. That's all I can say about it. Would absolutely recommend it a lot. After that I read kind of like I said, I started going to therapy this year, and so I was like, I'm gonna read books that kind of have something to do with therapy, and like my therapist was talking to me about CBT, and this book's over that, talks about that. And it's called The Book of Overthinking by Gwendolyn Smith, How to Stop the Cycle of Worry, because I've said it before, I think on my channel, and I've said it in real life over and over again, but it's a quote from The Office. Kevin Malone actually says it. It's the quote, I'm a textbook overthinker. I say that all the time about myself because I am. And so when I saw this book, I actually saw this at Barnes & Noble. I wasn't even really looking for a book like this. I just saw it as I was passing through like the little psychology section. It was faced out. I liked this color. And then I also saw the word overthinking and I'm like, oh, that's me. So I picked it up and I was like, oh, the back talks about the cognitive behavioral theory, and I'm like, I'm gonna read this. So I immediately bought it. It was kind of an impulse buy. But I tabbed it up. I thought it had really good tips for when you find yourself kind of starting that little mental spiral of overthinking and worry, and kind of just how to like stop it. Because what I learned that I do is I catastrophize a lot. I say like things like never, and it's like, well, how can you know? Anyway, yeah, so this book in conjunction to the What If It's Wonderful book, which has been hidden from me, have done wonders. Really, where is that book? After that, I read a cutie little, I want to say it's for kids, but maybe it's a middle grade, graphic novel, Hooky? I say Hooky, by Miriam Banastra. I believe she is not from America. She's from Spain. Okay, she lives in Spain. This was so cute. I really enjoyed this, and I read it to get me into the fall mood, and that it did. There's also a whole second volume of this, because this is chunky, and there's a lot. But it's cute! I really enjoyed it. It's also like a webtoon, so I think you can like maybe, I don't know, maybe you can read all of this online for free? But I got this one actually last year after seeing Liv from Liv's Library. Like, I think she hauled it or talked about it in a video or something, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get that. So it took me a year to finally get to it, but I did, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cute, very fall, because it's like a brother and sister who are like wizards or witches. So that was the last book that I finished on August 31st. Fast forward through September, October, November 30th, we finally finished the next book, Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. This is my favorite book of this year. I know that no other book is going to top it. It's all about the heart of Christ for sinners and sufferers. This was a book that I've had for a while. I've had this one for a minute, and I was talking to a girl that I go to church with. Her name's Ashley, and she was talking about this book after I was kind of talking about like an issue I was having in my personal life. She was like, you should really read Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. She said that she had read it twice already, and just, it was an amazing read. So I finally picked it up, and oh my gosh, I can't recommend this one enough. When I say this book's anointed, it's been anointed. Like, this man was anointed to write this book. It almost like, when you talk about like, you know, who wrote the Bible, and we say that like Isaiah, who was a major prophet in the Old Testament, he wrote it under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. That's how I feel like I want to talk about Dane Ortland when he wrote this book. I'm like, he was absolutely under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit when he wrote this book. I'm not saying this book is on par with the Bible, but I mean, he does use scripture, and I just felt like he translates so well the love and affection and adoration of Jesus for you, like where you are. You don't have to do a single thing to make yourself better or more presentable before Jesus loves you. Like, and I don't know why, because I've been a Christian for most of my life, but I'm like, I knew that I was falling into that mindset of like, I still had to like perform or look a certain way or behave a certain way to like get really the full love of God. And he basically wrote this book to tell me that's legalism, and that's not correct. That is not correct. But anyway, I really enjoyed it so much. I already know that I'm going to reread this one very soon. I highlighted a lot in this book. I mean, this is just an example, but it's like, I think any page I flip to, you're gonna find something I highlighted. So yeah, I talked about that one probably the longest, hopefully, because it meant the most to me this year. So yeah, those are the 45 books I have read. I know some of them are short stories, and you might be thinking they don't really count, but to me they do. And so yeah, 45 is the most books I've ever read in a single year, ever. My goal, I think, was like, my Goodreads goal I think was 22, but my real goal in my mind was like 40. So the fact that I read 45, I'm over the moon about. But now next year it'll be 50, and I may not be able to do that next year. So yeah. Alright, that's gonna be it for this video. I'm so sorry it's super long. I'm already halfway through my battery. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very soon in my next video. Bye!